Hi, my precious family. I thought you might like a video for our family devotion time today. The Lord has been doing great work in my life these last 6 months or so. That might sound a bit funny to you because maybe you think that the Lord has been doing great work in your daddy's life since you guys have been around. And of course, in many ways, He has. But being a Christian is not always easy. Sometimes there's things and even sin in our lives that we don't want to give up. Sometimes this sin is just ways of thinking that are destructive, and sometimes the sin is habits that are very hard to give up. But the Lord has guided me through a rough season, and He has brought me to the other side victorious. Well, the other day, while Mommy and I were watching Bridge of Spies, I was captivated again by this brilliant scene. It's got to be one of the best scenes in movie history, at least for your daddy, anyways. Let's watch it together and see what you think.
Standing there like that, you remind me of a man who used to come to our house when I was young. My father used to say, "Watch this man." So I did, every time he came. And never once did he do anything remarkable.
And I remind you of him?
This one time, I was about the age of your son. Our house was overrun by partisan border guards. Dozens of them. My father was beaten, my mother was beaten, and this man, my father's friend, he was beaten. And I watched this man. Every time they hit him, he stood back up again. So they hit him harder. Still he got back to his feet. I think because of this, they stopped the beating. They let him live. Stoiki mujik. I remember them saying it. Stoiki mujik. It sort of means like standing man. Standing man.
Now, this doesn't just mean man, like Daddy, Seth, Nathan, and Jamie are men. The man word here can be understood as person. So it means standing man or woman. So this includes you too, Hadessa and Gianna, and Mommy, of course. Well, what do you think it means to be a standing man or woman? Why don't you pause the video and talk with your daddy about it for just a minute? What does it mean to be a standing man or woman? Well, let's take a look at a few that I came up with and see how they match up with yours. A person who gets back up when life beats them down. That's a standing man. A person who is faithful and willing to stand tall for what they know is right. That's a standing woman. A person who is the same behind closed doors as she or he is in the public eye. That's a standing person. A person who is willing to give and sacrifice for others, even when no one is looking. That's a standing man. A person who resists temptation and can stand on their own, even when their beliefs or a cause that they're standing for or a stance that they're taking on a particular issue is not popular. That's a standing woman. A person who works hard for the glory of God, but is not a people pleaser. That's someone who's a stoike magique. Well, I think these all represent what it means to be stoike magique. There are plenty more, and you know what? We'll add to this list over time. But for today, I want to talk about number 3. A person who is the same behind closed doors as she or he is in the public eye. What do you think this means? Pause the video for a moment and draw a picture of what you think this means. When you're done with the picture, discuss their meanings with Dad. I bet you guys did great on your pictures. Who came up with the idea that a person who is the same behind closed doors as they are in public is a person who has great character or can be trusted? What do you think about this quote? Our character is what we do when we think no one is looking. Pause the video again just for a moment and tell your dad what you think the quote means. Well, if that's what it means to have character, if it means always being the same person even when no one's looking, what does a person who has very little character look like? Well, meet Hillary Clinton. She's a lady who ran for president of the United States this last election season. One of the reasons people do not like many politicians like her is because they are actually known for being the opposite of our quote we just looked at. In other words, they're usually known for being very different behind closed doors than they are when others are looking. In fact, it's reported by very reliable sources that Mrs. Clinton is so different behind closed doors than what we see when she's smiling at the public that many, many people decided that they just can't trust her to be the president. Pause the video for another moment and talk about what Miss Clinton is saying here in this quote. Well then, what does a person who has big character look like? I want you to meet Billy Graham. Now here is a stoike magique if I've ever seen one. Dr. Graham was an evangelist. He went to many, many countries and held huge conferences where he would share the good news of Jesus with thousands and thousands of people. Do you know that he had rules in place to make sure that he was always the same person behind closed doors as the person who was preaching to the huge crowds? One of these rules was that he would never be alone with a woman other than his wife. It's now called the Billy Graham rule, and many, many pastors and church leaders follow this rule. And so does your daddy. So, what big message do me and your mommy want you to get from this? Well, we want our precious crew to always be stoike magique, standing men and women. And when we're being standing men and women, we know that we must strive to be the same person when no one is looking as we are when everyone is looking. Always remember this, my children. At the end of your life, what will matter most is not how successful you were, how much money you made, how happy you were, how many people like or love you, how fulfilled you are with life, how many countries you visited, how many sports you can play, how smart you are, how much education you have, what type of job you have. Not a single one of these will really matter compared to how much character you have. A person's greatness is only measured by their character. And if people know that who you are when no one is looking is the same person when everyone is looking, then people know they are in the presence of one who walks with God. Stoike magique, kids. Stoike magique. And don't ever forget that as followers of Christ, we are called by God and given the strength by God to be standing men and women. I love you, kids. Let's stand together as men and women who follow Jesus Christ. And let's build our character on the foundation that we are going to make a commitment to be the same person behind closed doors when no one's looking as the person who's in the public eye when many people are looking.